If you own an iPhone, you've almost definitely come across one of Apple's shot on iPhone ads that have been on billboards, in subway stations, and showcased in their perfectly polished marketing videos. These images are usually beautiful, creative, and they're designed to make you feel like anything can be done with the iPhone. And while Apple isn't lying about what the iPhone is capable of creating, the gap between these results and what the average person can do with their iPhone is quite large. So what do you actually have to do to get these shot on iPhone results in real life? Well, in today's video, I'm gonna show you 5 steps that you can take to improve the way you approach shooting with your iPhone to get better results every time. This video is supported by PGY Tech and their new RetroVA system, which we'll be using throughout the video to demonstrate each step. If you watch this video to the end, you should come away better equipped to take photos you are consistently happier with on your iPhone, even if you're a beginner and you don't live in a beautiful place. Let's get started. To understand how to better take advantage of what the iPhone is capable of, let's compare how it differs from a dedicated mirrorless camera. There are a lot of nuanced differences, but the main 2 pillars I want to focus on are the physical controls and the sensor size, because I think these 2 things capture the majority of what makes a pro camera the experience that it is. Let's start with the controls and the mindset that comes with them. When we look at what makes a pro camera a satisfying experience physically, it's elements like a solid grip, exposure dials, maybe a zoom rocker, and of course, the shutter button. This tactile experience is what PGY Tech is trying to bring back to the iPhone with this new RetroVA system. The stock experience of the iPhone can feel fairly passive. Contrast that with a dedicated camera experience where you have your camera ready at a moment's notice so that you never miss a shot. This gets you actively imagining shots in your mind, which is how you start to learn the elements of what makes up a good photo. It's a subtle mindset shift, but the way that you use and interact with the camera can make a huge difference to the results that you get. I like to describe these 2 photography approaches as encountering images versus seeking images. When you're shooting on the iPhone stock, you are probably going to fall under encountering most of the photos that you take. Whereas when you seek images out to get photos that you imagine in your mind, you are engaging your brain's curiosity about what's possible. The iPhone stock camera is like driving an automatic car. It does as much for you as possible so that you get where you want to go quickly and without much thought. A dedicated camera experience is therefore more like driving a stick shift. It's slightly more involved, but the reward is you're more engaged with the act itself. It's not only about getting from point A to B. You're more connected mentally and physically to the activity, which should give you a stronger sense of enjoyment and satisfaction. PGY Tech's hope with the RetroVA system is to make you think like a photographer by making the shooting experience feel more concrete. So the takeaway from step 1 is switching your shooting approach from passively encountering photos to actively seeking them in your day-to-day life. This doesn't have to be only when you intentionally set out to take photos. It can literally be any point in the day, wherever you are. The point is to change the way that you look at the world. This is like training a muscle. The more times you take photos with intention, the better you get at spotting what you believe is a good photo opportunity. You'll be surprised how often it can come up when you switch how you think about it. The iPhone has much smaller sensors than a traditional mirrorless camera, but what does that mean practically? Well, a larger sensor gets you a shallower depth of field, or how blurred your background can get, wider dynamic range, or how much detail you can hold in bright and dark areas of a photo, better low light performance, or less noise and better detail even in dim lighting. There are, of course, other differences, but for the sake of simplicity, this captures the bulk of what makes pro camera images differ from iPhone images. Now, I'll add that while you can imitate a pretty convincing version of this look with the portrait mode on the iPhone, you are limited to shooting portraits at a specific minimum distance, and the preview in portrait mode doesn't look anything like the final shot. This can make it more difficult to compose the shot exactly the way you want to. There's also way more to a great looking image than just a blurred out background. If anything, I think this look can be a bit overrated. Instead of trying to get the iPhone to perform as if it was a larger camera, I think you're much better off embracing its limitations and using them to your advantage. This means intentionally shooting photos where a deep depth of field works better. The sharpness and detail of iPhone images has come a long way, and when you shoot with the intent to just have more of what is in your frame in focus, you can't hide behind a shallow depth of field. You'll start to discover ways to compose images that look good while not fighting what the iPhone already does quite well. When you look at shot on iPhone images, you will see this approach a lot. Many of these shots have almost everything in frame in focus, but there are other elements of the frame that support it looking interesting or tell a story in some way. A colorful background, interesting texture, or a super wide angle perspective. The list goes on. The RetroVA doesn't make the iPhone sensor any better, but it is trying to put you in the right headspace to be more thoughtful about what ends up in the frame, which is half the battle. The key takeaway for step 2 is shoot with the iPhone's limitations top of mind. Small sensors have a much deeper depth of field, so pick subject matter that supports that limitation and lean on other aspects like interesting colors, foreground and background elements, and precise composition. Okay, that covers our first 2 steps, but now how do you find interesting subject matter no matter where you are? Maybe you live in a place you find boring, or you aren't sure what to take photos of at all. If you don't already have a genre of photography that you feel pulled to, you can simply start by taking photos of the one thing that is available anywhere in the world: the sun. In our distracted world where we are walking around looking at our phones for more hours than we probably realize, it's really easy to let great photo opportunities pass right by you, simply because we weren't paying attention to them. We've been wired through evolution to appreciate sunlight, and it just so happens to make basically anything in the world look more interesting. This is a photo of literal garbage cans, and while I am not claiming that this is one of the greatest photos ever, I bet you can agree that it's made more interesting because of this hard slash of sun. The best thing about shooting this way as a beginner is you get a lot of practice, because there is a nearly unlimited supply of the sun hitting things or coming through windows that make for a good photo opportunity. This approach also works at nighttime, but instead of the sun, you are then just looking for interesting lights that exist on buildings or maybe street lamps. Even completely mundane locations during the day can be made to look more interesting at night with the right built-in lighting. The takeaway for step 3 is stay present to your surroundings and just watch what light is doing around you as you live your life. I took the Retrova down for a quick trip to Portland recently and did exactly this. By having the iPhone constantly at the ready like you would with a real compact camera, I took way more photos than I otherwise would have if I had to fumble with getting the phone out of my pocket and opening the camera app for every shot. Now that we have a few things to look out for when using the iPhone, let's talk about how to best capture your images. The Retrova includes a companion camera app made by PGY Tech to go along with the system. This lets you have complete manual control of every setting that you want. Or you can use it in a controlled auto, where you simply adjust exposure compensation up or down with the physical settings dial. This is how I use most mirrorless cameras when I want to shoot efficiently. From a workflow standpoint, the Grip has a micro SD card slot on the bottom for external storage. This is particularly notable because if you own an iPhone, you know how annoying it can be to get the photos off your device in a simple and quick way so that you don't immediately fill up all your storage on the phone. Apple wants you to just upload everything to iCloud and not think about it, something I recommend against if you don't want to overpay for yet another subscription forever. With the Retrova, you can record directly to the micro SD card and transfer files like a real camera without dealing with filling up your iPhone storage at all, which keeps things way more flexible. Because of the iPhone's limited dynamic range, I found that underexposing your shots by 1 to 2 stops, then bringing them back up in post gets you much higher quality looking photos. The iPhone's auto exposure leans towards making images slightly too bright in my experience. Since all things being equal, Apple has concluded that people tend to prefer brighter images over darker ones. This, however, does not account for the amount of interest contrast can add to the quote-unquote darker image, but I view images like this as actually just properly exposed. The main thing to take away when using a camera app like this one from PGY Tech is to internalize where you like your exposure to sit and how to use your settings creatively. You are taking back control of the iPhone's camera instead of letting Apple do it all for you. Here's an experiment you can try. If you set your shutter speed to 1/30th and try to track the movement of, say, a car, you can get some pretty cool motion shots, and this is one of many ways you can use manual exposure settings as a creative tool. Shots like this are something Apple doesn't really make that accessible with the stock camera app. PGY Tech's app also has their own version of filters when you are shooting compressed heat files. This functions similarly to a film simulation from Fujifilm, where it bakes in a specific color profile into your image so that you don't need to do any post-editing to get nice looking colors, which should save you a lot of editing time. They have their own take on classic negative, nostalgic negative, Fuji C200, classic chrome, Velvia, Kodak Gold, and many others. You can also control the intensity of each filter to dial in your look to taste. Here's some examples of images taken with these simulations so you can judge the look for yourself. A simple but effective psychological shift the Retrova also makes is that you can't be distracted by your phone when it is now acting more like a traditional camera for as long as you have it set up this way. So you are a lot less likely to just scroll social media or get distracted by email notifications while you're shooting. The main takeaway for step 4 is by using an app that gives you back settings control of the iPhone's camera, you can more precisely work around the iPhone's limited dynamic range by underexposing your shots by 1 to 2 stops, which is fast and precise to do using the physical dial on the Retrova Grip. Then, if you like to experiment, you can also use the manual controls for creative use cases like the panning shots we talked about. Finally, let's touch on one of my favorite aspects of any camera system, lenses. Understanding the relationship between your subject and how your lens affects how you see it is where you can really develop your own personal style. For example, I personally like longer lens landscape shots, so instead of using the 24mm or 13mm ultra wide on a landscape just to fit everything into frame, I like using the 48mm or even sometimes the 100mm and getting the right distance away to shoot a telephoto landscape. This usually leads to the focal point of the image feeling grander and makes everything in a landscape feel closer together. The Retrova system also lets you compound this look by using the included 2.35x telephoto lens, which gives you a 235mm equivalent shot that you can then expand even more digitally if you want. This could also work well if you're into wildlife photography. Here's some examples of shots using this lens. The lens collar is also compatible with most professional tripods quick release systems since it's Arca Swiss. I'll also mention that the final production version of the Retrova will include a 1/4-20 mount on the bottom of the grip for easier tripod mounting. The version I'm using here is a pre-production unit, but that feature will be on the retail units. Now, there is no one right way to use any particular lens, but here's what helped me when I was a beginner. Treat each focal length like a prime lens. Instead of zooming in and out digitally to change your framing, move with your feet to get closer or further away. This will teach you how each lens actually affects your image and help you discover which focal lengths you naturally prefer. Over time, each lens will start to have its own specific job in your mind. The main takeaway for step 5 is once you start to assign a job for each lens type, not only will it start to become second nature which lens to choose for a specific type of shot, you will also start to get a stronger sense of where you need to be with your camera in relation to the subject to get the shot that you want. Moving with your feet instead of taking a photo from the first place you see an opportunity is an underrated skill. Okay, we covered a lot of ground in this video, so to recap, here are the 5 steps one more time. Step 1, adjust your mindset from encountering images to seeking images. Step 2, embrace the iPhone's limitations instead of fighting them. Concept your shots for the iPhone's small sensor. Step 3, stay present to what light is doing around you. This is finding interesting ways the sun hits objects or using existing practical lights as a point of interest throughout the world. Step 4, underexpose your images to combat the iPhone's limited dynamic range and use exposure settings as a creative tool. Step 5, assign each lens a specific job to fit your personal taste and internalize where you have to physically be with your camera relative to your subject. While you can technically apply all of this with just your iPhone, the Retrova system is designed to make it easier to stay in a photographer mindset. So if you like the idea of turning your iPhone into a mirrorless camera experience, you can scan this QR code or check the first link in the video description. If you are just getting into photography, please let me know if you try any of these steps in the comments down below. I hope you found this video helpful.